I had an amazing night tonight. I am still coming home alone, and
whatever happened to candlelit dinners? Whatever happened to talking until the sunrise comes up and you can see the stars?
The texting is going back.
I was engaged for 6 months when I caught my fiance cheating on me through our Ring front door camera, and this is the story time. So at this time, I was 25 years old. I had been engaged for 6 months, and my fiance was 29. He was actually turning 30 as this whole thing happened. And to celebrate his 30th birthday, I took us both on a trip to Beverly Hills. We had a good trip.
My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and so it progressed very rapidly. So it went to her brain. So next thing you know, a week after they diagnosed her, they was telling everybody to come home, and she was dying. And so she was on her deathbed. You can hear the death rattle. So they had called the priest over to do the last rites. So they had all the family around her bed. Everybody was holding hands. And I really loved her. I really loved this woman. She's the only one I liked in the whole family, for real. I didn't care for the rest of them. But anywho, so I'm around the bed, everybody holding hands, and I am boo-hoo crying. I am crying my eyes out. I was the only one crying, for real. Everybody else looking at me like, the hell you crying for? She ain't your grandmama. But I loved her like she was. And so after, she gave her last breath, and the priest left. So I went back home, and my grandmother was sitting at the kitchen table, and she said, she really appreciates you crying for her. And I stopped and I was like, ma'am, she was like, she really appreciates you. And I was like, who? And she said, I'm not going to say her name. She said, Miss A. She said, Miss A said, thank you. Somebody cried for her. That made her feel good, made her feel loved, that somebody cried for her. And I was like, but then what you talking about? She said, y'all was standing around her bed. The priest came. So I'm looking at my grandmother, because my grandmother didn't go with me. And I was like, well, how do you know? She said, because I saw the whole thing. And I was like, what did you see for real? My grandmother said, I saw that y'all all was standing around the bed holding hands. And she said she was on her bed. She said she was dying. The priest came. And she said that you was crying. She said you was the only one crying. Okay, it's going on part 2. Okay, so this part 2. So my grandmother said that you was the only one crying. And she said, I saw you. She said, I was in one corner of the room looking at y'all. And she said, Miss A, she said she was in the other corner of the room looking down at everybody. And I was like, what? She said, thank you. That made her feel loved, that you cried for her and nobody else did. And she really thanked you. And I was like, she said she appreciate that. And I was like, okay. And I'm looking at my grandmother like, what you see for real? And my grandmother said, I saw everything. And my grandmother named everybody, but she didn't name everybody. She described everybody that was in the room. And she described the one in my house, because my grandmother was like, I saw y'all. She said, because the way you had to go, if your family and friends, you come to the back door. My grandmother said, she described this one in my house to a T. Now, mind you, my grandmother never went there. And so never went through the back door or whatever. So my grandmother described this one in my house to a T. She said, I saw you. I was there, but you didn't see me. She said, but I saw everything. And I was like, what? So she's like, I'm not going to talk about it no more. She said, I just want to let you know that she said she really appreciates you and she loves you. And she just turned back around and started reading her newspaper. And I was like, okay. And another incident, when I moved to Montgomery, my grandmother, she was in the late 80s, so she really couldn't move, travel for real. So when I went back home to visit her, and she said, I'm so proud of you. She said, because I had got me and my boyfriend, we got married. She said, I like your house. She said, you got a beautiful house. And I was like, how do you know what my house looked like? She said, because I saw it. And I was like, no, you didn't. She said, yes, I did. And I said, what my house looked like? And so my grandmother described the house to a T. She described the whole outside of the house. When she walked in, she said, you go through the doors, you got pictures on both sides of the wall. She went in my den. She said, I see your den. You got your green couch with your little white stripes through it. I mean, my grandmother described my whole house, and she'd never been. And I was shocked. I was just sitting there looking stupid. I was like, and she said, I told you I got snake eyes. She said, I can see. And she said, that's why I don't want y'all to look me in my eyes. Certain things I don't want to see. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, so I miss that old lady. She was a joy. And yeah, we got on her nerve, but I still miss her to this day. But that's the story of my grandmother. All right, bye guys.
Welcome back to my channel and welcome all new subscribers. Today we got some more creepy, spooky stories to share. Stick around for more.
Hey guys, so while I'm on the trend of telling stories, I thought I would tell one that traumatized me to this day. So when I was about 12 years old, my friend Jamie and I told a story about her before. We used to hang out constantly and go explore her parents' property, which was all forest, all woods. I know what some of you were thinking, why the fuck would you willingly go out in the woods? But hear me out, we lived in a very small town. There was nothing to do. Like, that town was like for retired old people. Out. What the fuck? We needed to find our own fun. So we like to take adventures in the woods. Anyways, on this particular little adventure in the woods, we came across an old abandoned house. Let me tell you, it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Like the stereotypical run-down old house in the woods type deal. I remember the driveway having one of those gates with like the padlock on it, and it was shut. So naturally, we crawled under the gate and went to the property. So hesitantly, we circled around the house and we started peeking in through the windows. They were super fucking dusty, so it was like really hard to see in there. But what we did see, it was like basically like furniture left behind. It just looked like whoever lived there before just kind of picked up and left. And Jamie, being the braver of us two, decided that she wanted to get a closer look. So she went around the back of the house and ended up finding one of those like cellar doors that opens up from the ground, you know what I mean? With the two heavy ass doors. And I was such a pansy back then. Like, I was like, Jamie, what the fuck are you doing? Are you trying to die? But nonetheless, she broke the latch open and slowly creaked the fucking door open. And there I was, standing on the side. I was over off on the side a little bit, staring at her, making her descent into these fucking, on these stairs. And I'm like, thinking to myself, like, are you crazy? Are you crazy? But I went along with her anyways, because I did not want to seem like I was a pussy, you know, even though I was a pussy. So I hesitantly followed her into this stone-walled, no-floor, having-ass, fucking creepy basement. It smelled like musty earth and, like, rust. Rusty. Sort of metallic-y. I don't think I'll ever forget the smell. It's just hard to explain without being there to smell it, you know? Along the walls were like these super tall, like bookshelf looking things. I don't know if you remember like old library style bookshelves, but it was kind of like that. But instead of having books on the shelves, it was like mason jars full of like weird liquidy, goopy shit. I don't even know because I didn't touch them. I was just like, ew, what the fuck is that? Just kind of assuming that it was like old food or something. As I was looking at those jars, Jamie being Jamie started to make her way up the fucking basement stairs. I'm like upset about it now because at the like if I knew what we were going to find, I would have been like, Jamie, we need to go. I would have called the fucking police. No, I begged her to stop. Like, I actually spoke up this time. I was like, no, we can't go up there. And she was like, relax, dude. Like, nobody has lived here for decades, for years. We're gonna be fine. Like, stop being a pansy. So I was like, oh my gosh, she just called me a pansy. I have to go. So reluctantly, again, I followed Jamie. And once the door creaked open to the top of the stairs, we were hit with the most foul smell I have ever smelled in my entire 25 years on this earth. Nothing that I've ever smelled since then is comparable to that smell. It made me have a visceral reaction. So instead of turning around at the smell, we decided to do the little shirt over the nose thinger and go on with our business. We stepped into the kitchen first, and it was kind of like an old time capsule. There was still like food plated on the kitchen table, which I'm assuming could have been the foul smell. But I smelled old food before, it didn't smell that bad, so I don't fucking know. I was like standing in the middle of the kitchen, just kind of like looking around. I didn't want to touch anything. But then Jamie, being Jamie, she was looking through all the cabinets, the refrigerator, every closet door, every nook and cranny of this place. She was touching and opening and just having the time of her life. The kitchen sink had a bucket full of water with like 6 dead rodents in it, and the floor was littered with tiny dead little bodies of rodents, of course. It was sick. It was fucking sick. Like, you couldn't even step. You had to physically watch where you were stepping, otherwise you would be stepping on like a little dead body. So then we made our way down like this narrow little hallway. We made our way to what seemed like a family room / living room / like bonus room of a house, you know what I mean? And when we started to walk down the hallway to get to that room, the smell started to become more foul and more overpowering and overbearing. Everything in my bones was screaming at me to get the fuck out of there, but Jamie was like fixated on the one door that was shut, the only door in the whole entire place that was still closed. So Jamie headed straight for the door, and something felt completely wrong about that, so I grabbed her on the shoulder and I said, no, please, like, please don't open that. Can we please just go? We have to go now, please. And she literally just like pushed me off her shoulder and was like, no, I want to see what's behind that door and then we can leave. We'll never forget the feeling that I felt the moments before she opened the door and the moments after she opened the door. Because when she opened the door, little did we know that it was going to reveal one of the most traumatizing, maybe the most traumatizing thing that either of us have ever encountered in our entire fucking lives. We were 12 years old. Let me reiterate this for you. Right there in the closet was the frail little body of an old woman. Oh, this is really hard to talk about. Her mouth was open and her eyes were like in that half open, rolled back in her head stage. Her lips were like purple and like obviously like stiff. Her skin wasn't like a skin color, it was like a bluish gray color. It didn't even look like skin, it was like old leather. Or I don't know if you've ever seen those videos of like aged meat, but that's like what it reminded me of. Wow, I didn't think talking about this was gonna make me cry. Wow, I saw a dead body when I was 12 years old. I've never told anybody this story, so that's why I'm like, oh my god. Like, hearing it come out of my mouth is like shocking. So anyways, to finish up the story, after we saw that, I screamed as loud as I possibly could, like out of instinct or just sheer adrenaline of seeing that. And I ran back the way we came through the house as fast as I could without even making sure that Jamie was following me. I didn't even care at that point. I was like, I physically, myself, need to get out of here, whether she wants to or not. But thankfully, I think she booked it when I booked it, because once we got out of the house, we like collected ourselves the best we could for 12-year-olds. We ran all the way back to her house and did not stop until we got there. When we got there, I remember having a conversation like, we cannot tell anybody about this. And I don't know why we came to that conclusion of not wanting to tell anybody about it, but we didn't. And I don't know if I feel like I regret that decision, because that old woman deserved some kind of like justice. And I wonder what happened to her, if the house is still there, or if anybody, came across that same discovery and put her to rest where she should be put to rest. At 12 years old, I didn't know what to do with what we had just seen. And I still don't. That was the very last time that Jamie and I ever went exploring in the woods in her parents' house. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys would have done in a situation like that. Would you have told somebody? Would you have done what we did? I don't know. How would it make you feel as a child and as an adult? Because I can assure you that like this incident has shaped me in a way that is just like traumatizing and traumatic. And that's not even the only story of a dead body that I've seen. That one is just one of the ones that is in my memory and in my fucking nightmares.
Hey y'all, so this is my godmother whom I always talk about. Mama, tell me a story about when people used to die in your day.
You talking about when I was a little girl, and they would come to the house and sit there. They would come to the house and they would put them chairs out there around that cooling board. When I was a little girl, and they would lay the people on the cooling board, because we didn't have no embalming like y'all got now. And I'll never forget. We was all sitting around, the old people were sitting around the cooling board, and they would sit around there till sundown, and then they would go home. and they would wrap the body up and they take the body in the house if they didn't have an undertaker to pick it up. So these children was just running all around the yard, and they sitting around the body. And Miss Esther, she was a big lady, but her dresses was always too little, and so, but she liked to wear the flare dresses, and so she walked by, and she had seen the body, and she walked by, and she was looking for a chair, and her dress tail caught on.
Come on.
Children was running and hollering, and the old people was running and hollering, and it was just a mess. And see, we didn't have all these fancy things like y'all had a coffin then. We didn't have it, and we had to wait with the folks on that. If we didn't have a cooling bowl, we put them on the door. You know, just a plain old everyday wood door. And that man stood up and church was out. And then when another incident was, I don't remember how old I was, but I still was wearing plaques in my house, so I had to be young. And my girlfriend, Daddy, he was scared of dead folk. So, but he liked to play checkers. And the men at the funeral home down the street played checkers. We didn't have ambulances like y'all got now. The hoods go pick up people and take them to the funeral home, or they take them to the hospital. But it was two old men would stayed there and worked at the funeral home. Well, my girlfriend, Daddy, he hardly ever went down there, but he just had a yearning to play some checkers. So he go down there and he say, y'all want to play some checkers? He said, yeah. The man said, well, y'all got it in dead folk? He said, yeah, we got one back there, but, you know, he ain't to bother nobody. He said, so we can go on and play some checkers. So they was just playing checkers. And back then, we didn't have no air conditioner. You had the breeze from outside, so you had a screen door so the wind could get in, and you hooked the screen door. So they was all playing checkers, and they got a phone call telling them they had a body to go pick up. So they told him, my girlfriend, Daddy, said, you stay here. It's going to be all right because we're going to be right back. He said, but the children, when we out of here, the children pick the screen door hook up, and they run through here, and they play, and they throw things, and they do things. He said, so I want you to stay here and keep the children from coming in here. So he said, well, ain't nothing going to happen, is it? He said, no, because we going to pick up the man. And the man back there, he cold, okay? But the man back there wasn't dead. See, a lot of people back then got dead alive. So he wasn't dead. He was in a coma. And he was laying back there on that. They was getting ready to embalm him. He was laying on the slab in the back. Well, my girlfriend, Daddy, hooked the screen door to keep the children from running in there. And he sitting at the table where he praying checkers. So about 2 days later, we go back to the house, and his face is all tore up. And everybody trying to figure out why his face tore up. And he had a scratch right here. Well, the screen door got a little piece of wood would go across the middle, and then one little strip over the top and one little strip under the bottom. That was for decoration, see. And so my girlfriend, Daddy, was sitting in the funeral home, and the man come walking out the back. And he forgot the screen door was hooked. And when he busted through that door, it just tore up his face. And it was just more than we could, as children, we was going to visit. They had more company that week than they had in their whole life. But we wanted to see his face. He come out of there, and he just was, looked like dogs had been scratching, and cats had been scratching his face. But he was tore up from the floor up. Yes, he was.
The time a ghost beat up my uncle because he was a horrible person. Yeah, true story. I was a little kid. I was around 8 years old. I was up in my room playing, and this man came upstairs with his little demonic looking eyes. He always looked like something was wrong with him. You know, you see people and they just look like they're up to no good by their eyes. He was just one of those people. He's one of my mother's younger siblings, close in age to my older siblings. Anyway, I don't think I was intentionally left home with him, but anyway, he was the only person in the house besides me. He came up those stairs as he had done once before, and he came up there with ill intentions. And this time around, I had backup. I was so scared, but a spirit snatched his butt up. I seen him when he got close to me. It snatched him and grabbed him and tossed him up into my closet. It pushed the door shut. The door did not have a handle. It just had this little shoestring. It was a shoestring tied through a little hole in the door where you open and close it. There wasn't even room for a handle on the door. Now that I think about it, it was just this little string. But it locked him up in that closet, and it beat his tail. It sounded like a boxing match, UFC match up in there. He was screaming, he was hollering, he was pleading, he was begging for help. He was begging to get out of there. Eventually, my mother came home, and I think one of my brothers, and they heard the commotion, and they came upstairs, and, you know, they're trying to figure out what's going on. They let him out the closet. He was pale, like all the skin. He was a very dark-skinned man, but he looked like he had seen a ghost. All this color had ran from his body, but he had bruises everywhere. Like he had been beat with fists or buckles. It looked really bad, but his actual skin tone, you know, he of course was frightened, but that man ran about that house, and he never stepped foot in the house a day after that. So yeah, a ghost actually protected me as a child. Seems crazy, but it is an absolute true story.
I have one. When I was 16, 17 years old, my bedroom was the attic of my parents' house. One night, I proceed to have one of the most real-feeling dreams I've ever had. In the dream, I'm sleeping in my bed. I wake up in the dream to an older woman standing in the corner of my bedroom. I do not know this woman, never seen this woman. She actually looked quite ghost-like, a little translucent. You could see through her a bit. Like, she looked like a ghost. She proceeds to ask me, I have a son. He needs someone to play with. Would you mind playing with him? Not sure why I chose to say yes, but I did. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally play with your son. That seems totally normal. Like, we're in a dream, so, like, fine, I'll play with your son. As soon as I say, yeah, I'll play with your son, he appears, like, if I'm laying in my bed, like, she's on this side, he appears on this side of the room, like, right where the stairs are, the top of the steps. And he starts to walk over to my bed, comes to my bed, and he's like, let's play arm wrestling. So I'm like, yeah, no problem, let's play arm wrestling. So I put my hand up like this, he puts his hand in my hand, and we are arm wrestling. At first, it's like a good give and go. We're like, oh yeah. And then like he pins my hand completely down. I feel his hand, hold on. I feel his hand around my hand, ice cold. He pins my hand down and is staring at me. And I'm like, okay, like let's play again. And he goes, I don't think you want to play this game with me. Just like that, like dead stare. I don't think you want to play this game with me. So I'm like, what does that mean? Let's play, like, okay, let's play the game. So he goes, no problem. Digs his nails into my hand like that and starts pinning my hand to the bed, yelling, I win, 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 I win. I rip my hand away from his. I feel the scratch marks on my, like, right here. And then he takes a step back with this, like, grin on his face. And he becomes this, like, black cloud of smoke. And I know that sounds unreal, but just stay with me. So he's this big cloud of smoke. This is all still in the dream. I get up, I'm screaming, I jump out of my bed. Here's where it gets crazy. I jump out of my bed in the dream, and I wake up in real life, and I am fully standing on my feet. So as I'm standing on my feet, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? I'm out. I'm down the stairs, out the room, right? And so my mom and my sister are downstairs in the kitchen cooking breakfast. My mom is a very spiritual person, so I have no problem just being like, yo, this is what just happened. And it's like, disregard the dream if you want, but I was fully standing when I woke up. Insane. And so typically, not saying typically like this happens all the time to me, but like my mom we regularly would have priests come over, bless the house, things like that. So like that's not weird. So like my mom throwing holy water around the house is not like an odd thing in my household. So like I'm expecting her to be like, okay, let me go get the holy water. I'll spray your room down. Like, not a big deal. She goes, the holy water is right there. You're going to go get it and go upstairs and throw it around your room with some salt. I'm like, why are you not doing it? She's like, I think you should do it. And I'm like, okay, this is insane. So I take the salt, I take the holy water, I go upstairs. My sister's like, I'll come with you, but I'm staying at the bottom stairs. Everybody's acting scared. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is something. So I have the holy water, I have the salt, I go upstairs. I have the holy water in like a little cup, and I have the salt. I go upstairs, and so I'm like throwing the holy water around, just a little pat around. And I have the salt, and I throw it onto my bed, and it sizzles. Bitch. I never ran down a flight of stairs faster in my life. I don't even think I touched one step. I jumped from the top 11 steps down, bow, hit it. I was downstairs the next flight, bow, hit it. I didn't stop for shit. I said the only way I'm going back up there is if y'all bring a priest to hose this house down with a